She thought her husband was unaware of her affair. But he was meticulously dismantling her perfect life from the inside out. Arif Rahman used to believe marriage was a fortress. In the 5 years he spent with Sohana, he had built a life that seemed solid, a modest apartment in Gulshan, shared routines, weekend trips to Cox's Bazaar, and the small rituals of love that made him feel safe. But safety is fragile. It began with small things, late-night phone calls, faint perfume on her clothes that wasn't his, and the subtle evasiveness in her eyes when she thought he wasn't watching. Arif's mind refused to accept the truth. Sohana, his wife, wasn't faithful. He tried to ignore it. He wanted to believe. Every memory of laughter, shared meals, and quiet Sunday mornings pulled him back. But the evidence accumulated, messages, unexplained absences, the sly smile when her phone buzzed. The first time he confronted her, it was gentle. "Sohana, is there something you're not telling me?" She smiled, the way she always did when lying. "Arif, don't be paranoid. I love you." That night, he lay awake, a storm raging inside him. Love and fury collided. He couldn't confront her again, not yet. He needed control, a plan, and the perfect moment. Arif became a ghost in his own apartment. He observed Sohana from small angles, the way she answered her calls, the time she spent outside, the subtle change in her routines. He knew every detail of her habits. But Arif wasn't just watching. He was studying her psychology. She was arrogant, believing he wouldn't notice. Her ego made her predictable. He also began observing Rafid, her colleague from the marketing firm, whose name appeared too often in late-night texts. Rafid was charming, bold, careless, a man who would underestimate the quiet, calculating type like Arif. Arif's plan wasn't violence. It wasn't confrontation. It was subtle, perfect revenge. He wanted her to feel the fear of losing control, the panic of being exposed, the slow unraveling of what she considered secure. Sohana believed she was untouchable. Arif's devotion made her complacent. Every stolen moment with Rafid was thrill, a game of risk that she thought she controlled. She never noticed the quiet intensity behind his eyes, the silence that hid plotting. Rafid considered Arif harmless, predictable, and dull. A devoted husband who worked long hours and rarely socialized. The man never suspected that he was being watched, analyzed, and used as a pawn in a game of psychological chess. Arif wrote notes to himself, tracking patterns. If she leaves the apartment at 9:05 p.m., Rafid will meet her near Banani. Every detail, every tiny anomaly, was logged. Revenge wasn't impulsive. It was strategy. Arif's plan began with information leaks. Not public, not criminal, just carefully constructed accidents. He created subtle confusion at Sohana's office, fake meeting confirmations, misdirected emails, small errors that made her look incompetent. She began to doubt her colleagues' loyalty. At the same time, Arif sent anonymous notes. "Do you think you're clever? Someone is watching." They weren't threats. They were whispers. Panic. Seeds of fear. Sohana laughed them off at first, convinced it was coincidence. But when Rafid received a mysterious email about their secret messages, suddenly the thrill of secrecy turned into paranoia. Arif escalated further. He installed small security cameras in the apartment, hidden behind frames and furniture, enough to record every movement, but not obvious enough to be detected. He knew when Sohana left and when Rafid came. He knew what she wore, how she smiled, how she laughed when she thought no one was watching. Every detail became a weapon. And yet, Arif never touched them. He let their own guilt and arrogance be the instrument of punishment. One evening, Sohana returned home late. Rafid had left an hour ago, and she was blissfully unaware. Arif greeted her with calmness, sipping tea as if nothing had changed. I feel like someone is watching me," she admitted, voice shaking. Arif's smile was faint, unreadable. "Maybe it's just your conscience." Sohana shivered. The words seemed innocuous, but they carried weight. Over the next days, small incidents escalated. Mirrors subtly repositioned to catch her reflection unexpectedly. Emails accidentally revealing fragments of secrets. Phone calls from unknown numbers, no one on the line. She began to see shadows where there were none. She checked the apartment obsessively, the paranoia growing. Even Rafid noticed the change. She became jumpy, distrustful. Arif's final move was not a confrontation, but an orchestrated convergence. He let Sohana believe she had orchestrated a secret weekend trip to a secluded guest house in Sanargan, a place she believed was safe for a rendezvous with Rafid. Arif, of course, had already been there for hours. He watched from a hidden corner of the veranda as they arrived, their laughter tight with nervous excitement. He didn't feel rage. He felt the quiet satisfaction of a mathematician watching variables slot into their predetermined places. He waited until they were in their room, the door clicking shut. Then, he made his presence known. He didn't knock. He used the key he had procured weeks ago and stepped inside. The scene was exactly as he had pictured it, Sohana's face, a mask of frozen horror, Rafid's, a comical blend of shock and cowardice. Arif. I can explain, Sohana began, the old script ready on her lips. Arif raised a hand, not in anger, but with the calm authority of a lecturer. Don't, Sohana. The performance is over. He held up his phone. I'm not here for a scene. I'm here to deliver a verdict. He turned to Rafid. Your company's quarterly review is next week. The board will be very interested in the presentation I've prepared. It details how you've been funneling creative budget to a dummy agency for the last 18 months. The evidence is comprehensive. Emails, invoices, bank transfers. All authenticated. Rafid's face went ashen. That's not true. You can't prove that. I can, Arif said softly. I designed the scheme. I just let you execute it. Every clever idea you had to skim from the top was a seed I planted. You were my puppet, Rafid. Your greed made you predictable. He then turned to Sohana, whose confusion was now eclipsed by a dawning, terrifying understanding. And you, Sohana. You believe you're leaving me for a successful, powerful man. But by this time next week, he will be unemployed, unemployable, and likely facing charges. The life you think you're running to is a phantom. It doesn't exist. The ground had vanished beneath Sohana. It wasn't just the affair that was exposed, it was her entire judgment, her perception of reality, that lay in ruins. She hadn't been playing a dangerous game, she had been a mouse in a labyrinth designed by her husband. The man she had pitted for his dullness was a master architect of ruin. The fear was no longer of being caught, but of the man she had shared a bed with for 5 years. He hadn't just beaten them, he had rewritten the past to ensure their future was a wasteland. And for Rafid, the charming facade shattered completely, revealing raw, animal panic. He wasn't facing a cuckolded husband, he was facing his own financial and professional annihilation, orchestrated by the very man he'd mocked. He began to plead, but the words died in his throat as he met Arif's gaze, utterly devoid of anger, filled only with the cold finality of a concluded business transaction. Arif watched them crumble, and he felt nothing but a profound, sterile quiet. This was the peak of his strategy. He hadn't just revealed her betrayal, he had systematically destroyed the alternative she was betraying him for. He had proven, irrevocably, that the world she desired was a fiction he had allowed her to believe in. His victory was absolute. Arif didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving the silence to swallow them whole. He drove back to Dhaka alone, the city lights bleeding into the night. He returned to their Gulshan apartment. It was no longer a place of shared memories, but a command center where he had won his war. He lighted a cigarette and stood by the window. His phone buzzed. A single notification from an encrypted cloud drive. Project, Veritas, complete. All assets secured. A slow, faint smile touched his lips. This was the true victory the original ending missed. It wasn't about them feeling guilty or scared. It was about him demonstrating his absolute, unassailable control. He had not only predicted their every move, he had authored them. He looked at his reflection in a dark glass. The man staring back was not the betrayed husband of 5 years ago. He was something sharper, colder, and infinitely more powerful. The fortress of his marriage was gone, but in its place, he had built something far more resilient, an impenetrable fortress of self, built on the ruins of their lies. And from this new citadel, he felt, for the first time in a year, perfectly, utterly at peace. The end.